Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. What I wanted to talk to you about today is, whether or not psychedelic entities are real. And it's a pretty hard topic to talk about, I guess, because, before I took psychedelics, I had the pretty common opinion, which is that they are just an aspect of yourself, that the outside world is the real world. You take a drug and you enter the realm of delusion, basically. And most people I talk to who haven't taken psychedelics are kind of under that impression. And certainly I was until I encountered my first entity. And then it becomes really hard to believe. There's such a sense of genuineness and realness to these entities that is mystifying. And the stuff that they communicate with you is so foreign and profound, but it resonates as something so true. But if you were to ask me, do I believe that my experience of these entities, as they are, is real and objective? I would say no. I don't believe they are. But I don't believe that my experience of entities in the real world is real either. Entities being like humans and animals. This is because I think that people often forget that our senses are extremely subjective. We interpret this world through these subjective senses, and we define our world with it. So we can experience another human being, and we will just see them as a one thing, as a single thing that is carved out and separate from the surrounding landscape. But what our senses doesn't show us is that this person is actually made up of trillions of other entities or cells that if you put into a microscope, they themselves look separate and carved out of the surrounding landscape. But to us, it just makes up one single human being. This is information that's robbed from our senses. And the other thing is, of course, if you go through high school, you'll probably learn some pretty basic science, or one of the most fundamental truths of science, which is that everything is atoms. I am, at my core, atoms. The ground that I walk on, at its core, is atoms. And the air that I breathe in, at its core, is atoms. What does that mean? That means that everything we experience is atoms. It's all one thing. There is no disconnection from anything. The truth is that the barriers we perceive with our senses, the outlines of objects, items, tools, and entities, is not there. They merge with the surrounding environment, which is all atoms. If you could get a lens that sees reality objectively, or at least as science explains it to be, you would see a giant waveform of atoms, or vibrating energy. Some parts of this waveform vibrates at different speeds. Some parts of it is solid, so it vibrates slowly. Some parts of it is gaseous, so it vibrates fast. One sec, I'm just going to adjust this lighting. But this is not our experience of this giant waveform. We experience it as things, as a landscape of tools, items, and entities. This is caused by a filter in our head. I talked a little bit about this in another video, but basically it's just we experience the after effects or residue effects of this filter in an experience called pareidolia. At least I believe. When you see faces in clouds or in trees, this is because you're seeing the after effects of this filter that interprets faces and interprets entities in specific patterns that present themselves to us throughout this giant waveform of atoms. If you could just experience life objectively, you would not see the after effects of this filter. You would not see these faces in clouds. But you have to, because that is how we create entities, through this filter that makes faces in this environment that aren't really there. Now keep that in mind, because we've needed this filter, because as we've evolved, we've had to separate and carve out things in our environment so we can use them, so that objects can become tools and certain types of energy fields can become food, basically. But there's so much that is not told to us throughout our evolution. There's so much information stored in our subconscious that we're not allowed to know. Otherwise, we become comatose. Our main function for thousands of years has been to survive. But there's been all this problem solving and philosophical thinking that's been going on in the back of our minds without us realizing. All of it stored in our subconscious. I think that the subconscious is kind of held in different regions of our brain. Now, when you take psychedelics, you're allowed to communicate with these regions of the brain. It allows for different parts to literally merge. So what's happening is I think that this information of the subconscious is becoming present to the conscious. And it's flooding our conscious with all sorts of new information. But it's being channeled to one of the key aspects of our conscious or of our ego. And that is this filter that creates pareidolia, or this filter that creates entities. All of a sudden, this new information stored in our subconscious is being channeled through this filter that creates entities. And what's happening is we're seemingly experiencing hyper-intelligent entities with their own personality, with their own identity, even with their own backstory. But they're not there. They're not real. All you're actually experiencing is alien information. Information that's so profound and foreign to you that when it is embodied in an entity, you do not question its authenticity. You're like, fuck no, this thing is real. I have no doubt about it. But it's most likely the case that your experience of entities itself is artificial. And really, I mean, think about it. Like, you're experiencing an alien entity and you think it's going to see and perceive reality in the same way as you, as being made up of tools and of other entities? Fuck no. That thing, it's energy. So what I'm trying to say is that our experience of these entities as they are is you can't trust it as an objective experience. The information is probably true. Now, this itself is something that many people will argue. A common assumption of psychedelic use is that when you take a psychedelic, you enter chaos. And then you come back to the outside world, which is the world of order and organization, and you simply organize your experience of chaos and you apply meaning to it. And so you kind of get a sense of it. You've just learned something brand new, but it's a delusion because all that happened to you was that you were thrust into chaos, and then once you've come back, you've organized the things that you remembered into an order that you can understand and apply meaning to. But the reason why I would argue against this is because I think that can't explain the level of truth that you experience, because it's just so, the truths are so profound. Now, what I mean by truth is like, I think Jordan Peterson explained it in a really good way. He interpreted truth as something that's practical and that you can apply to life. I think that's a good way, because if you think about it, like if you were to say that a truth is that if you lie about all day, don't believe in yourself, that you're quite likely to get the things that you want in life. Well, I think that's a whole bunch less true than if you were to say, if you believed in yourself and worked hard towards a goal that was in line with your desires, that you are far more likely to get what you want. I think that's more true. So there is and the truths that you learn from these psychedelic experiences are extremely practical, and they can help you to become way happier. You can be a depressed person, you can undergo a psychedelic experience, and you can come out of it as one of the happiest people you know. That's why MDMA is being used in America, or is being trialed in America to treat PTSD. I don't think MDMA is exactly a psychedelic, but like psychedelics, it can allow you to confront things that usually stimulate fear within you, but with an entirely different perspective that can help you overwrite that fear with something new. And it's not just like some chemical subduing this fear this part of your brain that simulates fear. I mean, it probably is, but what's accompanied with that is our thoughts that explain why you don't need to be afraid, or sometimes entities that communicate why you don't need to be afraid of these things so much, or how you can live the life you want to live and be the happiest version of you. And then, if you can remember what they've said, you can apply it in sober life, and bang, you've learnt a new profound pragmatic truth. So, that's why I don't believe it's just you going into chaos. There's an intelligence in your experience. Whether or not it's entities, well, obviously I don't believe it is exactly, but if you believe in your experience of other people, then most likely you're probably going to believe that these entities are real too. Anyway, guys, that's basically the video. I will just quickly share what these entities, some of the best information that these entities have communicated to me that have made me a fuckload happier. Keep in mind that naturally people can only interpret what is told to them as something they already understand. That's the limits of language. You know, if a wise man communicated with a very young person, that young person's not going to understand any of what the wise man tells him in the way the wise man intended him to understand it. He's just going to interpret it as something he already knows. Maybe he'll learn a little bit from it, maybe not, but whatever it is, he's not going to learn what this wise man knows. And that's kind of the same with this. So, but I'll tell you anyway. Basically, what these entities have said is to accept yourself as you are totally, and to love yourself totally. People are riddled with fears about the future and regrets of the past, and they hate themselves for it. You don't need to hate yourself for it. Love yourself. They're a part of who you are, and who you are is beautiful. You are the person you're meant to be. If you're meant to be someone else, you'd be someone else, but you're meant to be you. So you might as well accept and love who you are in the meantime. And naturally, in doing so, you'll happen to be the person you want to be anyway. But don't love yourself for that reason. Anyway, guys, love you all heaps. If you're not having a great day, have a great day. And I'll talk to you soon. Peace.